2 empty chairs. That's what faced me when my name was called at Yale Yard. No roses, no cameras, just 2 name cards. Mom and Dad fluttering in the breeze while Miss Vermont blared 2,000 miles away. Hours later, one photo from my cousin flipped our town upside down. The perfect family finally met the truth. Church whispers, community pages on fire. And me, I didn't argue. I didn't chase. I made one decision that changed everything forever. You want to know how the applause at my graduation became their reckoning? Stay, because the next 10 minutes explain why I never looked back. Where are you watching from? I was born and raised in Burlington, Vermont, a small town where everyone knows your story before you even live it. Sundays were for church, Wednesdays for gossip, and every family had a role to play. Ours was supposed to be the perfect one. At least that's what my mother worked so hard to make people believe. My mother, Loretta Beaumont, used to be Miss Vermont back in the 80s. She never really took off the crown, just traded it for a family she could parade. To her, beauty wasn't just skin deep, it was sacred. She called it the Beau legacy, like it was some kind of royal bloodline passed through sequins and smiles. My father, Randall Beaumont, owned a small auto repair shop on the edge of town. He was quiet, soft-spoken, the kind of man who thought silence kept peace. He rarely contradicted my mother, and when he did, it ended with that tired phrase he always used, "Let it be live." As a kid, I thought those words meant love. As an adult, I realized they meant surrender. Then there was my sister, Sylvie, 6 years younger, and the sunshine of the Beaumont family. Mom said she had the kind of smile that wins rooms. Sylvie grew up in a world of ruffled dresses, glitter crowns, and posture lessons. While I grew up behind the curtain, zipping up her gowns and carrying her heels, I wasn't bitter. Not at first. I just believed that if I worked hard enough, Mom would notice me too. I was the quiet one with straight A's, debate trophies, and an obsession with law books. But every time I showed her another certificate, she'd say, "That's nice, honey, but remember, confidence makes you beautiful." It took me years to realize that in her language, beautiful meant worthy. Our house was a museum of her glory days, photos of her pageant wins, then Sylvie's junior crowns. My face appeared only in the background, blurred between their smiles. The truth is, I stopped trying long before Yale. I learned to build my pride in silence, to celebrate alone. When I got my acceptance letter, I thought maybe finally I'd earned a place in that family portrait. But when the big day came, when the applause rose and those 2 front-row chairs sat empty, I understood. Perfection was never the truth. It was just the story my mother told the town, and for the first time in my life I stopped wanting to be in it. Yale was supposed to be my clean slate, the one place where the Beau legacy didn't exist. In New Haven, no one cared who wore the crown of Miss Vermont. All that mattered was what you could prove on paper in class and court. For the first time, I felt seen for my mind, not for my posture. Still, every achievement came with that quiet echo. Would she care? Would she even notice? So, months before graduation, I did something I swore I'd stopped doing. I tried again. I spent 2 weeks writing the perfect message. It was short, polite, hopeful. The graduation ceremony will be June 10th at Yale Yard. It would mean the world to me if you and Dad could come. I've already booked your hotel and bought your flights. Love, Vivian. I hovered over the send button for a full minute before finally pressing it. Then I waited. A day passed, then 2, then 5. Finally, her name lit up my phone. June 10th is the Miss Vermont Finals. Sylvie's worked so hard for this. You understand? 4 words. You understand? They burned hotter than any insult. It wasn't even a question. It was a command, an assumption that I would fold, that I would keep playing the same role. I always had the understanding daughter, the background character in her perfect picture. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, then turned my phone face down. Outside my dorm window, snow fell in slow, quiet spirals, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort but cauterizes. That night I walked to the library, the one place where I'd built myself piece by piece. Between the towering shelves of law journals, I opened my old journal, the one I'd started back in Burlington, when no one clapped for me. I flipped through the pages filled with small victories notes to myself, and stopped on a quote my grandfather, Judge Winston Beaumont, once wrote in his careful handwriting. "You don't need anyone's spotlight to be seen. Just stay whole." I sat there for a long time tracing those words. Something in me shifted. Not an explosion, just a quiet, irreversible tilt. Maybe I'd never have her applause. Maybe I'd never be the one who shines. But I could be the one who stops begging for light. So I folded the graduation invitation, placed it inside the back cover of that journal, and whispered to no one. You wanted me to understand, Mom? Fine. I finally do. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was clarity, and that clarity was the beginning of everything that came next. The night before graduation, the world outside my dorm room smelled like rain and lilacs. Inside my suitcase sat half-zipped on the bed. Black heels, crimson gown, and one empty envelope where the family photos should have been. For weeks, I'd pretended not to care. I told my friends my parents were too busy to make it. I said it with a smile sharp enough to hide the sting. But that night, as the clock ticked toward midnight, the truth finally settled. They weren't coming, and I wasn't surprised. I opened my phone one last time. The message thread with Mom, Loretta Beaumont, was short, lifeless. You understand? Still glowed like a scar I couldn't erase. Below it, a string of unread texts from my father, Randall, all simple and safe. Proud of you, kid. No punctuation, no calls, just his same old silence wrapped in politeness. For the first time, I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through my photo gallery snapshots of study nights, debate wins, campus winters. Then, I reached the one I'd taken weeks earlier, 2 empty chairs under the Yale banner during rehearsal. Something about that image stopped me. I stared at those chairs until a thought surfaced, soft but certain. If they won't sit there, I will. That's when I started writing. Not a message, not a plea, a speech. Every word I'd swallowed since childhood poured out the years of invisibility, the weight of being the understanding one. But it wasn't bitter. It was deliberate, like closing a door gently one final time. When I finished, I folded the speech neatly and slid it into the same envelope that once held their invitations. The envelope that once said, "Please come now," held the story of what happens when you don't. I packed the journal my grandfather, Judge Winston Beaumont, had given me, his words tucked between the pages. Stay whole, that was all I needed to carry. Before turning off the light, I did one last thing. I opened my contacts, scrolled until I found Mom, then Dad, and without hesitation, I pressed delete. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't make noise, but makes room. Outside, the rain began to fall, tapping softly against the glass. I lay down listening to it, realizing it wasn't a storm anymore. It was a cleansing. By morning, I knew exactly who I was walking for. Not for the 2 empty chairs waiting in the front row, but for the girl who had finally stopped waiting to be seen. The morning of graduation, Yale Yard looked like a postcard sunlight spilling over brick buildings, flags fluttering in the soft June wind. The air smelled of old books and blooming magnolia, the kind of scent that feels like both an ending and a beginning. I dressed slowly, my crimson gown crisp against the white of my shirt. Every sound felt amplified, the rustle of fabric, the chatter of classmates, the brass band tuning up somewhere in the distance. Everyone had people waiting for them. Everyone but me. As we lined up to march, a girl behind me whispered, "Your parents must be so proud." I smiled. "Maybe," I said softly in their own way. When the ceremony began, the sound of applause rolled through the crowd like waves. Names were called one after another. Every few seconds, a new eruption of cheers, families shouting, waving, crying. Then came mine. Vivienne Beaumont, Juris Doctor, Yale Law School. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then a few polite claps, my friends, my professor, and one pair of hands I recognized instantly. I looked up. In the 3rd row, Grandfather Winston stood tall in his gray suit, the morning sun, catching the silver in his hair. Beside him sat Elias, the quiet med student, who had seen me through long nights of studying and self-doubt. When their eyes met mine, both smiled, steady, proud enough to fill every empty seat around them. I walked across the stage, took my diploma, and turned toward the audience. 2 front-row chairs stood untouched, name cards pinned neatly, Mr. and Mrs. Beaumont. A small breeze caught the edges, making them flutter like the wings of something finally let go. That was my closure. Not revenge, not triumph, just peace. But fate has a sense of irony. That afternoon, while I sat with Winston and Elias near the Thames River, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Evelyn, who lived back in Burlington. She'd posted a photo on Instagram, me on stage sunlight hitting my face diploma in hand crimson robe glowing against the blue sky. The caption read, "She did it alone." I stared at the picture for a long moment, feeling something shift deep inside. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter, like truth settling into place. By evening, the post had spread like wildfire. Burlington wasn't a big town. Gossip moved faster than weather. And on that same day, June 10th, another event was streaming live. The Miss Vermont Finals starring Sylvie Beaumont. In 2,000 miles of difference, 2 spotlights burned at once. One built on applause, the other on silence. While Sylvie smiled beneath glittering stage lights, I stood with my grandfather taking photos by the Thames River. I didn't know yet that the world was watching both of us. By nightfall, messages began flooding in. Old classmates, former neighbors, even church members who hadn't spoken to me in years. Is it true your parents didn't come? Loretta was at the pageant the same day. Everyone's talking about it, Vivian. I didn't reply to any of them. I just scrolled watching the story take shape on its own. Someone had posted a collage, 2 photos side by side. Left Sylvie crowned on stage tiara glittering mom. Loretta crying as she hugged her. Right me at Yale sunlight on my face. 2 empty chairs behind me. The caption read, 2 daughters, 2 stages, 1 choice. It was brutal, and it was true. Within hours, local news picked it up. Former Miss Vermont skips her daughter's Yale graduation to attend beauty pageant. Comments poured in, half outraged, half stunned. Imagine missing Yale for a tiara. She raised 1 daughter to be seen and 1 to be forgotten. Vivian didn't need the crown. She became it. By midnight, the town was split in 2. The believers and the deniers. Church forums buzzed. Old friends whispered. The Beaumont family, once the model of elegance, had become the latest scandal. When my phone rang that night, I already knew who it was. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice burst through the speaker, sharp, trembling. What did you do, Vivian? Everyone's calling me a terrible mother. You humiliated this family. I stayed silent for a beat, letting her words bounce around the room. Elias watched me from across the table, his eyes steady calm. No, Mom, I said, finally my voice low. I didn't